Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. Been an intense week for me this one, been to London and really looking forward to going to grocery shop in Vegas next week. By the time that this podcast goes out, you will have seen some copious amounts of pictures of me, probably with my friends in the US and around the world actually, and especially the CPG guys who are our partners in the US, over, I think, 500 episodes strong and like 38,000 LinkedIn followers. We're trying to follow their pace at 25,000 LinkedIn followers as we speak. But speaking of the CPG guys, we have our guest today here on the podcast that actually debuted on the CPG guys. You can tell us a bit about when he did that. And it's no other than Niccolò Gloazzo, who's the Senior Director of Media and Omnichannel at Kettle and Ferrer. Hey, Nicco, how are you?
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me. I'm good. Thanks.
My pleasure. When did you do the CPG Guys podcast?
I think it was actually almost a year ago right now. It was probably around September last year. Yeah, probably went out around like this time of the year, but we did that probably in July, I feel like, because I met with Sri in Barcelona. Then we planned for the podcast and then we did the episode back in July, I feel like. And then it went live September, October, I guess.
Oh, yeah. You met it at my party here in Barcelona, the one that I did for Shop Talk Europe 24. By the way, I was telling you before, but I'll tell the audience as well that we're doing our live event, Candid Commerce. We've done 3 of them so far. We did Amsterdam, London, New York within the last year. And then we're going to do Amsterdam again on November 5th. I know that you mentioned you can't come, Nicco, but for anyone in the audience that wants to come, I'll try to leave the link in the show notes. If not, just contact me and ask me. Nicco, I was obviously, as I do, stalking your LinkedIn profile before we spoke, and you have an interesting career background. I mean, if not, probably you wouldn't be on doing the podcast with me today. But I was curious to know, where did you grow up and how did you end up in the business world?
Yeah, so I grew up actually here in Italy, but since I was, 20, I've been traveling a lot, mostly for work. But also I went abroad. I went to Australia for a couple of years, and then I went back to Italy. And then I went, I worked actually a few years that gave me the chance to travel a lot, like from Asia to United States, etc. And then I started university. I started university a little bit later, let's say. So around, I think I was 24-ish. And then from there, that's when I moved to Amsterdam. I study business in Amsterdam. I love Amsterdam. I've been living there for 4 years, living by the canals in like a nice houseboat. So it was very romantic and nice.
You lived in a houseboat?
Yeah. My last 2 years, I
always wonder who lives in those houseboats.
Yeah, I did live there. It was very, very romantic, very nice. At the beginning, actually a little bit challenging because I'm not saying that you're going to feel seasick, but you kind of feel that sometimes it moves a little bit, right? But not as much. After a while, you just get used to it. And and then from there, because I was studying, I started freelancing. So I said, okay, I need to find a way to get some money here because otherwise Amsterdam is so expensive, right?
Yeah.
So I started freelancing on Upwork. That's from that moment, then I started to get into like conversion rate optimization, like e-commerce, and I did a bunch of courses. So I took on a few gigs and keep working as a freelancer. And then almost after uni, I joined Nike because there is like the EMEA headquarter in Hilversum, nearby Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So I joined them for, I think it was like 6-7 months pretty much. But at the same time, I was still doing like, some side gig because I love hustling a little bit. And that's when Kettle and Ferrer, they asked me, hey, do you want to join us? Right? Like I was doing first part-time or a few hours, let's say a week. And from that moment, they were like, okay, we need someone that focus on our e-commerce because we are growing. Do you want to join? And I said, yeah, sure. Happy to join. So from that moment, then I step away from Nike and just focus on Kettle and Fire.
Got it.
And
And I'm curious to know, Nikos, because I mean, like me, you're from a Mediterranean country, and we know that it is maybe in Italy it's more common than here in Catalonia, but I think that in general, people don't necessarily go and study abroad, or even less. They like, you do high school and then you do university, right? Because that's what you do. But you were working, you went to Australia. Why? What was there something that made you follow this like unconventional path?
I don't know. It's a good question, but I don't have a straight answer because no, probably it's just me. Like I consider myself a little bit weird in that sense that try to avoid the standard path, and as you know, like I'm here, between Italy, Austin, and I bounce, back and forth. So I'm not following a straight line in that sense. So overall, I would say there was nothing specific that made me do that. It's more so me, the needs of doing something different or get out there and challenge myself a little bit because I was getting too comfortable in Italy.
And so basically you're in Amsterdam, living in a houseboat, which is fun. You're studying, you're freelancing at the same time through Upwork. Then you finish university, you get the role at Nike while you're still doing some work on the side. And one of your clients, I understand, is Kettle and Fire, no?
Yes, correct.
So how did you end up working for a US company? Was it like just the randomness of Upwork or?
Exactly, 100%.
And curious to know as well, like, if you can tell us a bit more about Kettle and Fire for whoever doesn't know them.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. Was the randomness of Upwork, and do you know who hired me back then? Was Wilson Hung, which now is my partner on the retail media agency. So it's a very small world. Everything kind of comes together. But yes, was him that hired me through Upwork and then asked me to join full time. And Kettle and Fire is a bone broth company based out of the US. When I joined, which was almost 6.5 years ago right now, almost 7, I started it was just purely like focus on the e-commerce side, right? So DTC, direct to consumer, everything was about like optimization, conversion rate, etc., etc. So we were doing like tons of A/B testing, landing pages, offer testing, upsell, post checkout. So we did a lot. But then the business, because it's a CPG product within the food and within the grocery space, started to expand on Amazon as well as on retail. And that's when also my role started to expand a little bit and not only just focus on DTC, but start learning Amazon. And then because Kettle and Fire was expanding and growing so much at retail, and then Instacart just came out, or not Instacart, but let's say the advertisement option on Instacart, that's when I started to manage that piece as well. So my role automatically kind of shifted from focus to DTC to focus on DTC, Amazon, and retail media. And now retail media, or let's say omnichannel, is what is taking majority of my time. So media in general. And because our grocery brand expanding a lot in grocery, so that's when you tap into like all of those grocery retail media.com platforms that are getting more and more right now. A lot of buzz, let's say.
Yeah, totally. And can you tell me a bit about like the broth category? I mean, because is there any particularity, or also like it wouldn't be like the first category that would come to me with thinking that it would be very like marketable online, but curious if you can challenge that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I believe Justin and Nick, the founders, had success at the beginning, is because they tap into a category that was very commoditized, right? And very old school, no marketing, like old packaging. The product, I think the product also, if I'm not wrong, were not also shelf stable back then. The ingredients used were not like organic ingredients. The beef used was not, grass fed, etc. So a lot of basically what there was in the market was not really up to the standard that they really care about. And so they said, maybe there is a business here. So what they did was like they set up a landing page, right? And said, okay, we are selling bone broth. organic or grass-fed, etc., with organic ingredient. And a bunch of people actually bought it online. So that's something clicked in that moment. They said, okay, there is a business here. And that's when they actually launched the company and expand across the United States. So yeah, sometimes the category that, that you don't feel like, I believe are the categories that are going to get the biggest opportunity and the biggest upside if you disrupt the category from a marketing standpoint. Because think about even liquid death, right? They're selling water. It's just water, right? But their marketing is probably amazing. And that's what's driving also their success.
Yeah, we had a guest recently talking about like that. What they really get excited about, it's actually a business that's just been bought by Premier Foods, and they do like berry like grains and stuff like that. And he said that in his career he's found like a lot of like marketing things that are like not necessarily sexy, like more mundane categories, but creating like a product that's interesting, if you know what, like that's differentiated within these more like commoditized categories. So
yeah, actually, the other day I was thinking about this, and funny enough, I don't know. Do you know tuna Rio Mare? It's an Italian brand, probably. I don't know if it's like European brand, but it's a 4 billion.
I definitely rings a bell, but I guess the name is also relatively standard. So
yeah, and it's like canned tuna, right? Tuna in can. And I was curious because I saw their advertisement on TV, and I was like, I don't know, how much are they making, right? And they are a $4 billion company making 60% of their revenue out of tuna can. And I was like, okay, this is such a boring product, like tuna can, keep selling that in grocery, but they are a huge business and they own the full supply chain vertically. So from, production to actually the fishing boat, etc. And that's the type of business, again, it's unsexy, but I'm wondering if there is opportunity to disrupt that business, right?
Yeah, and by the way, the podcast I was referring to, which I'll leave in the show notes as well, as Richard Peak from Merchant Gourmet, which maybe was because he came to the podcast, but like less than a month later, it was announced they sold the business to Premier Foods. So yeah, good on them. And you mentioned that like retail media has really exploded. How have you seen it, like from your perspective? That growth of retail media, and why do you think it's become like such an exciting space? Because I think that when you explain retail media to someone that's not in the industry, in the same way maybe that when I first heard about it, they're like quite surprised it's such a big deal in our industry, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I find it complicated to explain as well sometimes when people ask me what I do, right? Because it's like, okay, so what do you do exactly? So I always just say marketing, but I think it's interesting because after COVID, a lot of people started shopping online. And so more people were using like those last mile delivery company, like Instacart, GoPuff, etc. So definitely there was like an increase and boosting usage, I would say back then. But on top of that, I have the feeling that a lot of retailers thought about, okay, I can actually monetize my first party audience if I build out a platform where people are going to bid on that platform to win the top placement. And at the same time, with those money, I'm going to reinvest those money into marketing, advertisement to make more people shop online, right? So it's some sort of flywheel effect. And this is happening, and a lot of retailers are pushing this, which means that a lot of retailers now, if they don't have their .com, let's say, website, they build it on top of Instacart Carrots, which is like the back end of Instacart to run advertisement. So they build the engine in the back end through Instacart, but the front end remain most likely just the retailer itself where people search for product. And they try to push more and more users to shop online. Something else that the retailer notice is that people that shop online and in-store buy much more frequent than people that just walk into a store, right? Because people that walk into a store buy maybe, I don't know, once a week or once every 2 weeks. But if you have a .com presence, people can actually buy twice a week instead of once a week, because maybe you forget something, you just order it online. So all of those retailers try to go after this specific market. At the same time, they are investing money to push people online And then they are reaching out to brands and say, hey, you brand, you should actually spend some dollars online or commit 100K, 200K a year because you have a target of, let's say, digital penetration need to be at least 10%. And what does that mean? It means that 10% of your sales should come from online. And so the brand says, okay, I really need to start investing some dollars online, spending money on sponsored product, etc., because I want to make sure I hit that milestone that is important for my buyer in order to maintain my position on shelf. And so there is this flywheel effect that generated revenue for brands, revenue for retailers, so retailer can monetize on their audience, and also revenue for a software company that build out the software in the back end. And all of this is expanding and growing very fast, which is an opportunity. And so a lot of marketers are learning those platforms and tapping to those platforms to kind of say, okay, this is a new opportunity for us, right? We should learn those. And it's exciting because it's all new and it's evolving very, very fast.
Yeah. And you mentioned marketers being like retrained or wanting to learn this. But what I hear from the retail side as well is that they've been able to really tap into the shopper marketing budgets, but really struggle with tapping into the CMO's budget. So is that because like the full funnel part is not really there yet? Like you can sell more, but maybe not build a brand online through retail media?
I think partially is that, but also partially is because most of the brands don't use the budget in different ways. Sometimes it's part of shopper, sometimes it's part of marketing, sometimes it's part of sales, right? So there is not like, because it's so new, in my opinion, there is also like not a single truth, right? Which means, okay, this is part of marketing or part of brand, etc. And so budget should come from that. Most of the time is usually brand marketing and sales fighting a little bit to kind of decide which dollars from which budget should go to retail media. In my opinion, should fall under marketing, but a way to sustain that is like we can just increase the marketing budget a little bit, taking some dollars, for example, from sales budget because we know we're going to invest on retail media. So at the end of the day, it's a wash, I feel like, from a total budgeting standpoint, because usually budget for a company is like trade spend, so in-store sales, activation, plus marketing.
Yeah, and it's also interesting then how retailers talk about it, right? Because some are very like, oh yeah, we're only like the media part is completely separate. Some are much more talking about it as like part of their like of the retail general proposition, like that it's very like they don't deny there's a link.
I think, Daniel, that a lot of retailers either way are trying to restructure their internal resources anyway to kind of decide where retail media should fall. Because I've seen a lot of retailers restructuring and say, okay, we have those new campaigns running, or this new team is going to handle the shopper portion. So it's not clear, in my opinion, just yet which team within the retailers knows what. Because I noticed that even with another bigger retailer, bigger natural retailer in the US, no one is internally know how to set up an account. Most of the time, they just bounce you between a bunch of people. And so it's really hard sometimes even to get an account set up because no one knows that those companies, those retailers are sometimes so big that the information are not probably shared enough. So they're trying to move fast. They're trying to get, up and running like a retail media piece, an e-commerce site, but there's no communication internally. So sometimes you just need to figure it out. And that's why it's a little bit complicated.
And it also sounds like when they talk about success stories in retail media, like 99% of the time it's about selling more.
Yeah.
Not so much about brand awareness. That's what I feel like, at least.
100%. Yes, it's always that because one, there's no way to measure brand awareness, in my opinion, sponsored or like in the basic bottom of the funnel advertisement that most of retailers are recommending. So success story is always about sales. But why is about sales is because for a brand, they need to keep a high velocity in store in order to maintain position, right? In order to kind of remain in store. And so velocity is usually number one goal that every CPG grocery brand has. Brand awareness comes second, unfortunately, but still should be a priority, especially when you start to go above $50, $100 million. That's when brand awareness becomes important. And you should start even sooner, but of course, it depends on the budget. So that's why retailers like Walmart, Target, Kroger, like the major one, even Instacart, started to open up their first-party audiences to platforms like Trade Desk so that you can run streaming TV while leveraging their first-party audience and attach potentially a brand lift study to it. That's a way to prove out top of the funnel advertisement for those retailers.
So it's the promise of like really sending the message to a very targeted audience, no?
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. I know you're very passionate about retail media, and as you said before, together with the person that hired you at Kettle and Fire, you've actually started even another. You can't settle with one job. I think, Nicco. Now you have an agency in parallel as well. Tell me about a bit about it.
Yeah. So as you know me, I like to do a lot of things or keep myself busy, let's say, with very little social interaction, unfortunately. But yeah, when actually I started at Kettle and Fire, that's a moment when I was like all into Shopify. I launched a small Shopify agency as well, like online. And that one was specifically for the Italian market because there was no one talking about Shopify in Italy. So that's when I launched a little Shopify agency, and it was like up and running until probably a few months ago when I decided to kind of step away because I cannot focus in too many things. I like to keep my focus into two things max. So that piece, I sold it to another Italian agency. So in that way, I could, focus on the Kettle and Fire side and also building the agency with Wilson. But so back to your question, yes, Wilson and I, we worked together on Kettle and Fire. He was head of growth back then. And then a few years ago is when I started to kind of discuss with him about this like retail media growth, etc. So the beginning of last year is the moment when I started to get a few clients and I started to launch the agency. And then Wilson was an advisor back then. But after a few months, he saw the potential. And I was like, okay, Wilson, I really need help here because otherwise I need to, I can't do both. So I really need help so that I can mostly, keep my focus. And so he said, yeah, happy to join. I'm going to join as a partner, buying a stake and jump in. So that's the moment when we put together our heads and said, okay, let's open up QBR Media. And he's now on board and he's now leading that piece as well. So yeah, it's an exciting time because the agency is growing as well, getting a bunch of brands. The industry is very, it's on fire, I'd say right now. And Wilson has been great because he hands out a lot. So this allowed me also to maintain my focus accordingly and don't get too crazy. And yeah, it's all about retail media, right? From bottom of the funnel advertisement across all platforms, from Instacart, Kroger, Walmart, etc., GoPuff, to top of the funnel, which is going to be included at the beginning of next year. And I feel like that was the right thing for us, given our background within the CPG and given how we were able to grow Kettle and Fire from 10, 20, $100+ million, and their expansion of retail and clubs as well, like Costco. Brands started to kind of notice that and ask for, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I pick your brain? So from that time, I was like, okay, probably better to pick a bigger brain, which is the agency.
No, that's interesting. And what type of brands are you working with so far? Is it all like CPG?
It's all, I'd say 90% of the brands are CPG. Some of the brands are like Feel Good Food, for example, Daily Harvest, Brahmi, Bachans, Archer, Country Archer, Loban, then we have Partik, Sauce. So I'd say 99% of the brands are CPG.
Yeah, it's interesting that point that it's like really the retail media phenomenon has been especially important in grocery, which is not by far the sector of retail with the most online shopping, right? If you think fashion, electronics, they have much more percentage of their sales are online. However, the retail media has not that evolved, which is interesting, no?
That's true. Yeah. And my opinion is also because there could be higher frequency and repurchase rate on the grocery side compared with like fashion, for example, or other even the beauty space, I feel like, right, where you need a product maybe every 3 months. So given that there is like this higher frequency rate on the grocery space, that's where retailers tap into this. But like I said at the beginning, I feel like this in order to work, need to be a flywheel, right? So retail need to invest in awareness on his side to push people to shop online. And then the brands need to keep investing in order to show up first, because otherwise private label is going to take priority, right? Private label or bigger brands with bigger budget, they're just going to take priority. But the good thing, even for small $20, $50 million brand on the retail media space, is that there is an even playing field. So no matter if you are Brahmi or Barilla, you're still going to compete for the same slot on a cost per click base. So you have the same levers, except of course in budget, but which is different in store, right? Because in store, in order to get an end cap, side cap, etc., you need to pay, first of all, premium, but also most likely legacy brands are going to win that spot, right? Or a specific period of time in a year, an important time.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that also on the grocery point, I think it's just like, probably given that it's very competitive and the margins are low, it's just been traditionally kind of very sophisticated and best practice. So it's probably just like an extension of that. Like if you think like, as you were saying, trade marketing in store, category management, etc. You have the best trained commercial people across practically all industries, if not all industries, are in consumer goods, right? So
yeah, no, for sure, and that's like a much older also legacy type of marketing, the one in store, right? Like it's been like that for a lot of years. There's few changes now happening, but it's not moving as fast. Meanwhile, where there is more innovation happening is like on the digital side.
Yeah. And from your agency perspective, by the way, do you have like a clear differentiator versus other agencies and so on? Like
yeah, I think one of the clear differentiation that we have is that it's an agency built by operators, right? So with brands in mind, from brand operators, because both Wilson and I, and a lot of people actually that work within the agency, are coming from a brand background, which allow us to think like a brand think when it comes to retail versus maybe other agencies that are a little bit a mix of both or thinking more from an agency standpoint. That's number one. And the number 2 and 3 is like all the our background on the digital side and performance side make us very data focused and data oriented. So everything that we build out, even a lot of like tools that I build out with Lovable or Spreadsheet, all coming from a data background within the performance DTC space, which is, okay, let's understand break-even ROAS. Let's understand if we include your lifetime value, what ROAS is going to look like. So a lot of those metrics are coming and are there because our background within the performance side.
Mm-hmm. And how do you also because you mentioned that it's a bit like the people were interested in the playbook that you had with Kettle and Fire and how you grew that brand like that. But obviously, I think one thing that's fascinating, but also driving people crazy, is the fact that like the rules of the game go through maybe slight, but they go like through a lot of slight variations throughout the year, which ultimately makes the thing change quite a lot, right? How do you like keep up to date with the latest?
Yeah, not easy for sure. I would say podcast and just talking with a lot of rep. I like to actually keep my relationship with the account reps very close for each platform. So I'd say podcast, webinars, and I'm not going to event as much, but like having this relationship with account rep is really useful because you can just keep up for every single platform what's happening and what's new. And the good thing about Kettle and Fire is that because we are becoming a bigger brand, we have priority access to a lot of like those new beta opportunities. And that's something I'm going to learn straight away myself. And then going to give me the opportunity to also expand this and share this knowledge with all the other brands as well that the agency manage and together with Wilson. So every time, I'm even part, of the, how do you say, like council, partner council, something like that for Instacart, which means that also yesterday I was on a call with Instacart exploring the new maybe layout that they are planning to launch or what can they provide better from an insight standpoint, from a data standpoint. So there is like a lot of this interaction that allows me to kind of remain up to date with what's happening within the industry, but also for every retailer.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, by the way, a focus that you have on performance and data. What are the key metrics that you look at, both at Kettle and Fire, but also with your agency clients to measure?
So it depends. Yeah, it depends often on the stage of the company that you are, because like there's different KPIs at different stages, right? At the beginning, you might want to be very ROAS focused because you really need to kind of hit break-even point, which is not usually my recommendation. But a lot of metrics include like from, okay, ROAS, standard one, but also like new to brand. So how many new customers are you actually bringing to, try your product? Because that's very important in order to build out then your repeat rate over time, or your digital penetration number, right? So are we actually, as we grow our spend, as we increase our spend, is digital penetration, so the percentage of online sales, growing as well? Or are we simply spending money but not incrementally? And then cost per unit move, right? So it's a metric which tells you how much does it cost to move 1 unit of product in a given platform or retailer. So you can compare this metric across multiple retailers and see which retailers is more efficient in moving units. Because if we go back to the goal, which is like not sales lift, which is like velocity target, then you want to make sure that you are efficient in moving as many units as possible at the cheapest price as possible. So those are a few metrics. Then, of course, like sales lift as you grow and a few others. But in general, especially in the retail media, what I noticed that you often have to kind of paint the story a little bit and adjust that to each brand, or adjust it to the goal that a brand has, because every stages you are in are different. And my recommendation is often not to focus much or chase ROAS too much, but instead try to focus more on the high level and bigger picture, which is like velocity and new to brand customers. Because if your product is good, which is always my assumption, people are going to buy you again and again. So try to get as many new customers as possible first, and then make them repurchase maybe after a few months.
Yeah, if they like when you speak with your customers, but also like from what you hear in open forums and so on about retail media, is there any like things that you'd like to debunk of like things that are commonly understood but you don't necessarily agree with?
Yeah. I mean, the ROAS piece is definitely one that I've commonly understood, but I don't agree with, right? Because like sometimes like that's a metric that can be easily inflated when you think about it, because you can just go after branded keywords, for example. And so the more you go after branded keywords, the higher your ROAS is going to look like. So that's a conception that often you discuss with people, but it's hard to make them change their mind, or is often like overestimated. That's the feeling I have. Even if it's important, because you want to, most of it, like it's important from a cash flow standpoint, it's important to break even, etc. most of the time, but you are playing and you are in the business for the long term, I think, and not the short term. So it's important to invest often for the long term. I think that's the number one that I'm seeing across brands, or even internally at Kettle sometimes, that I have to debate about.
Yeah. And you'd mentioned something to me as well about club rotation with Instacart.
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean?
So clubs is like the club stores are like Costco, BJ, Sam's Club, right? So those are specific, like think about Costco, you need a membership to shop at Costco. Usually the price is very low most of the time, right? It's a much better price, the quantities are different, etc. But the good thing is that for Costco specifically, for example, if you are a brand and you're launching at Costco for the first time, most likely you're going to get a rotation, which means you're going to go to a specific region, let's say Southeast, and you're going to start there. So you need to prove out your velocity there. So it's going to be like 80 stores, for example, in the Southeast, and you're going to put your product, your pallet there for all of those like stores. So that's a rotation, right? When the rotation is done, so when you clear up your inventory, the option is let's do another rotation, different state. Let's go national, or let's do every day within that region, right? Because maybe you hit your velocity target, which is great. Same day delivery on Costco is powered by Instacart. And that's one piece. So that's a pretty cool thing happening on the Costco side. And so you don't need actually a Costco membership to buy through Instacart. No. So your pool of audience is going to be much bigger. But then on top of that, for the club product, most of the time, actually every time you have a unique UPC. So it's a unique product identification, right? Like a unique SKU. And you can advertise those SKU on Instacart, which means that you know exactly how much budget and how much money you are going to spend and the revenue coming from that specific UPC, which is something that is not possible with other retailers, right? Because when you sell at Walmart, Target, etc., most likely you have the same UPC. So when you advertise on Instacart, some of the dollars are going to go toward Walmart, some toward Target, etc. The good thing with Costco is that because there is a unique UPC, you can advertise that to Instacart, and so you can potentially support the growth of the brand, the growth of Costco, by investing dollar on sponsored product to that unique UPC.
Interesting. And that's not really talked about that much, no?
I don't think so, no. I guess, I'm not sure why. Probably because like club rotation, they're getting more, I'm seeing more and more brands to do those club rotation, but yeah, I don't feel like many people talk about it. I'm not sure why.
And by the way, within the different things that you've done and you do, I think you've also done some angel investment, no? In your career.
Oh yeah, that was a few years ago. Always actually through Wilson, the partner, because he has like a how do you call it, like an investment vehicle, right? So an investment like group. Together with Kevin Lee from IMI. So they invest on a lot of companies, a lot of like small, usually small companies. And so I did a few investment with them, even with Olipop, because it was very bullish on the category and on the company itself. So I did a few very small, let's say, angel investment back then. Now a little bit less, I'd say. I have other focus right now, but yeah, it was a fun time.
Yeah, I mean, Olipop, quite a big success story. Good name drop there. Well, angel investment is basically you put money in, and on top of it, you have like a bit of a say on the strategy. No, at least you can give some advisory capacity.
Could be that way, or also like you just put like some dollars and then hope that one day that's gonna turn into like a profit. And usually it's through like there is a budget allocation. So for example, those like investment vehicle, they have like, okay, I'm going to invest 50K, right? And then it's going to say to everyone within the group, how much money do you want to put, right? You can put 2K, 3K, 10K to eat that 50K budget that they had. And then the 50K is what is going to be sent to the company.
Mm-hmm. And there's one question that we ask all our guests, Nicco, which is, with everything that you've learned in your career, if you had to go back to your younger self as you were starting to work, what one piece of advice would you give yourself?
I would say to myself to go study engineering instead of economics, and then like physical engineering or like nuclear engineering, and then do a master in AI or quantitative finance in Australia, and then start working. So instead of doing like study, work, I go straight to work, but in Australia, study engineering. That would be my recommendation.
Well, that's the first. We've asked for advice to many people. I don't know at what episode we started doing that, but pretty early on. So more than 100 pieces of advice, and nobody's ever said that. So good one. Nicco, I'm going to try to quickly summarize our conversation. Obviously, I won't be able to cover everything, but I think it's interesting how you mentioned that you kind of challenged a bit like the convention. And I was curious to know, right? There's an Italian guy delaying, university studies and then going to Australia and then Amsterdam, I thought was very interesting. I think you're one of these people that also is good at like seeing opportunity. So whenever you found something you like, you did it. And when you were doing some freelancing with Kettle and Fire, even if you were working with Nike, which is a lot of company that a lot of people would want to work with, I think you saw like some potential there that just made you go for it. And I think that it's a good thing that you say as well as advice as well. Like, I can do like 2 things at the same time, but 3 is already too much. And that's true. Like, you don't want to spread yourself too thin either. Like, you want to really, if you're doing something, go all in, or half all in, if you know what I mean. But like 3 things is probably too many already, no? I think that we all know people that do a lot of things, and you wonder at the end which ones they end up doing. I like what you mentioned about retail media, because I asked you like, why have people bought into it? And you said it's a way of monetizing audience. And I thought it was interesting as well. Also a way to make more people buy online. So not only that to buy a certain brand online, but just to grow that channel. And you mentioned there's not a single truth right now, and whether it comes from sales or marketing. Very interesting. You mentioned the term of velocity, which I thought was very interesting. And yeah, I'm very curious to know how your agency will do, how you'll be continuously supporting other brands with your operating knowledge, which, as you said, I think that you have like a first contact with the retailer that many don't have. So I thought that was super interesting. So thanks so much, Nicco, and I look forward to running into you at some events sooner rather than later.
Hopefully very soon. Thanks, Daniel.
Excellent. Well, thanks to our audience as well for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys every Wednesday and every Saturday morning, Central European time.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Dwyer Partners SL, doing business as the FMCG Guys, or the individual author, host, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Dwyer Partners SL. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Dwyer Partners SL expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we presented in this podcast.